My name is Claire. I'm 36 years old. I work as a financial analyst, someone who understands value, risk, and the cost of deception. And I never thought I'd have to hunt my own sister like a fraudster. The night I got the solicitor's letter, I didn't cry. I didn't call her. I didn't even finish my wine. I sat perfectly still, reading the line over and over. Your inheritance has been fully disbursed. Your trustee confirms all assets have been transferred. Transferred? A clean, polite word for theft. Her signature sat at the bottom, bold and decisive, like a personal insult in black ink. I remembered our last call, her voice low and warm. Trust me, Claire, I'm protecting both of us. Protecting? She was protecting herself. I pressed the letter flat on the table, smoothing out the crease where my hand had crushed it in anger. My pulse pounded in my temples. This wasn't some petty family fight. She'd stolen my future, the house I was saving for, the freedom from debt, the safety net my parents built with a lifetime of sacrifice. She gambled that I wouldn't fight back, that I'd accept it. I stood up slowly, my chair scraped loudly across the floor. I left the letter in the center of the table like a declaration of war. I wasn't going to beg. I wasn't going to negotiate. I was going to expose her. I was going to make sure she couldn't touch another cent, mine or hers. I switched off the light, letting the room go dark around me. And in the silence, I whispered my promise like a curse I fully intended to keep. You want it all? Fine, let's see how you survive with nothing. Growing up, my sister and I were close enough to fool everyone, even ourselves. She was older by 2 years, always the talker, the negotiator, the one who could charm teachers into giving us extra time on assignments. I was the quiet one, the note-taker, the numbers girl. I thought it made us a perfect team. Our parents weren't wealthy, but they were steady, careful. My father ran a small construction business. My mother worked as a school secretary. They saved diligently, never spent frivolously. Every vacation was local, every Christmas was modest, but they always said the same thing at the dinner table. We're not leaving you girls much, but what we leave will be equal. Fair. That idea was carved into me like scripture. After they died, within 18 months of each other, everything felt brittle and fragile. The grief made us cling to each other for a while. We sat at the lawyer's office in black clothes, nodding solemnly as he read the will. It was simple, everything split 50-50. The assets weren't extravagant, the family home, some savings, modest investments. Enough for both of us to have a good start, if handled well. But I was in the middle of a demanding job transition then. She offered to take care of the estate administration, said she'd manage the legal fees and taxes. I'll handle it, she told me, voice cracking with tears. I can't lose you too, Claire. I believed her. She became the trustee officially. I signed the papers in that same lawyer's office, numb from grief. At first, she sent me spreadsheets, updates, reassuring emails. We're almost through probate, just hang in there. But the tone changed slowly. Replies grew curt, updates less frequent. She started mentioning unexpected costs, legal delays. I told myself to be patient. After all, she was my sister. But cracks kept showing. She didn't want to meet in person to go over the numbers. She canceled calls at the last minute. She asked me to trust her. I felt foolish even then, because I did trust her. Meanwhile, I worked late nights and saved aggressively for a down payment on a small condo. I wanted security. I wasn't asking for luxury, just a safe space I could call mine. But the inheritance was always part of the plan, my parents' last promise. I remember one morning staring at my banking app and realizing I couldn't afford the place I'd been eyeing for months. Not without my share. I texted her that afternoon. I need my half. I'm ready. She ignored me. When she finally replied days later, it was vague and patronizing. Let's talk about this when you're calmer. Calmer? I hadn't even raised my voice. I tried to call. She sent me to voicemail. That was the first time I felt something harden inside me. I started making notes, dates, messages. I asked her for a proper accounting of the estate. She sent an insultingly vague spreadsheet full of holes, no supporting documents. I called the solicitor who'd handled the will. He sounded uncomfortable, evasive, said she'd told him we were all sorted. I remember hanging up and realizing with perfect cold clarity, she never planned to share it. She just assumed I wouldn't fight. She thought I was too quiet, too polite, too loyal to make trouble. She was wrong. Once I admitted the truth to myself that she'd stolen from me, everything looked different. I stopped giving her the benefit of the doubt. I started collecting evidence. I went through every email she'd sent about the estate. They were full of hollow reassurances, vague language. We'll finalize soon. Just trust me. Never an actual dollar amount, never a timeline. I remembered the first time I asked her to sit down in person with the numbers. She laughed it off, said I was being dramatic, that it wasn't some corporate audit. She knew exactly what she was doing. That realization stung more than anything. We weren't kids anymore, playing lawyer and banker with monopoly money on the living room carpet. She was deliberately stonewalling me. I reached out to the solicitor again. This time I didn't ask. I demanded. He admitted under his breath that the final probate distribution had been completed 6 months earlier. Fully released to her account. 6 months. She hadn't said a word. When I hung up, my hand was shaking. I let the phone drop onto my couch and sat in silence, staring at nothing. My chest hurt. It wasn't just rage, it was grief all over again. My parents would have been horrified. They trusted us to take care of each other, and she'd used that trust like a weapon. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed remembering our mother's funeral. My sister had held my hand so tight it left nail marks. She'd wept into my hair and whispered, "It's just us now. We have to look out for each other." I felt physically sick remembering it. The next morning I called her. She picked up on the second ring, breezy as ever. "Claire, what's up?" My voice was ice. "When were you planning on telling me you'd taken everything?" Silence. She recovered quickly. "I don't know what you mean." I didn't shout. I didn't plead. I simply laid out what I knew. The solicitor's confirmation, the dates, the bank transfers. Bah, she laughed. Actually laughed. "Claire, you're being paranoid. You don't understand how any of this works. The fees, the taxes. You don't get it. I understand enough to know you emptied the account." She sighed, long-suffering. "Look, you wouldn't know how to manage that money anyway. You'd just blow it on some condo and end up broke again. I'm protecting you." Protecting me? I felt my fingernails digging into my palm. "Send me the full accounting," I said, voice low. "Every transaction, or I'll get it myself." She snorted. "You're being ridiculous. It's family money, our money." "You mean your money now?" She hung up. That was the last time we spoke on the phone. After that, it was texts and emails, her messages growing shorter, colder, more openly hostile. "You're ungrateful. You're tearing the family apart. I don't have time for your drama." She even had the gall to say, "Mom and Dad would be ashamed of you." That one nearly broke me, because in my heart I heard them saying it. But I held on to one truth: they would have been ashamed of her. I stopped trying to reason with her. I hired a solicitor of my own. He didn't sugarcoat it. "She's the trustee. She has fiduciary duty. If she's diverted funds for personal use, that's fraud. We can force an accounting, subpoena the records." I felt my mouth go dry. "Can we win?" He smiled thinly. "If she stole it, yes." He explained the process. It would be slow, expensive, ugly, but I'd see every bank transfer, every check she wrote, every asset she tried to hide. I said yes before he finished talking. I wanted every receipt. I wanted her squirming under oath. I wanted her to remember I wasn't the little sister who worshipped her anymore. That first meeting with my lawyer was the moment I stopped feeling powerless. I wasn't the quiet one anymore. I was the one preparing to bury her in her own lies. After I hired the lawyer, there was a strange silence in my life. It wasn't peace. It was the silence of waiting for something to break. Oh, I couldn't sleep. My mind spun with numbers and timelines, with the memory of her laugh when I confronted her. I'd lie in bed replaying our childhood. I saw us on the swings in our tiny backyard. She always went higher, daring me to follow. She told me she'd catch me if I fell. What a joke. The worst part was that I kept trying to find a way it wasn't true. Some error, some misunderstanding. But every time I checked the solicitor's statement, every time I reread her emails, it was there in black and white. She hadn't just taken the money. She'd lied for over a year. She'd watched me struggle to save for a home while she sat on my half of our parents' legacy. I imagined her spending it, dinners out, trips, her new car, and I hated myself for being so trusting. At work, I functioned on autopilot. Numbers were still safe, predictable, but people weren't. I found myself second-guessing everyone's motives. I skipped lunches with colleagues, declined invitations. It felt like if I let anyone close, they'd just see how humiliated I was, because that's what betrayal does. It makes you question your own worth. I remember one night standing in front of my bathroom mirror, staring at my reflection until the lines of my face blurred. I said out loud, "You let this happen." My voice cracked. I think that was the lowest point, but eventually the anger cooled into something harder. Resolve. I started writing everything down. Every call, every email, every transaction she'd shared, every time she refused to meet. My lawyer said it was good, build the paper trail. But it was more than that for me. It was control. For the first time in months, I felt like I was doing something. Friends noticed something was wrong. One asked if I was sick. I told her no, just dealing with family stuff. She squeezed my arm and said she was sorry. I didn't tell anyone the truth, not then, because part of me was embarrassed. What kind of grown woman lets her sister steal from her? But another part of me wanted to keep it quiet because I knew what was coming. I didn't want sympathy. I wanted to win. I spent nights researching trust law, fiduciary duty, fraud. My lawyer warned me. This wouldn't be quick. She'd fight. I nodded. That was fine. Let her fight. Because I wasn't going to back down. I wasn't the quiet sister anymore. I remember sitting in my apartment one evening, lights off, laptop open to case law. The city outside was silent, and I realized she'd forced me to change. She'd forced me to see the world the way she did, as something you could take from if you were bold enough. But if she wanted to play that way, I could too, and I would play to win. Once I accepted there would be no apology, no honest accounting, I stopped hoping for it. I shifted entirely to strategy. My lawyer was patient with me. He'd handled family fraud cases before. He explained the process: force an accounting, uncover the misuse of funds, file a civil suit for breach of fiduciary duty. She'll fight disclosure, he warned. I said, good. Let her waste money on lawyers instead of spending mine. We started with the formal demand for a full accounting. I remember reading the draft before he sent it. Polite, precise, but lethal. It cited her legal obligations as trustee, detailed the penalties for fraud. It made clear we were ready to take it to court. I signed it with a steady hand. She didn't respond at first, then came the email, short, angry. I can't believe you're doing this. You're destroying the family. No numbers, no documents. My lawyer just smiled. She's rattled. We sent another letter, this time to her lawyer. Silence. While they stalled, we worked. We filed preliminary motions to freeze the estate's remaining assets. I'll never forget standing in the courthouse hallway the day the judge granted the temporary freeze. I felt calm, almost serene. It wasn't revenge yet. It was containment. She wouldn't drain anything else while we hunted the missing money. I requested bank statements, subpoenaed records, every transfer had to be explained. Her lawyer fought tooth and nail to limit disclosure. They claimed it was harassment, the judge disagreed. The court ordered full financial discovery. I remember my lawyer's voice on the phone that day. She's going to have to open the books, every cent. I sat in my car for half an hour after that call, breathing, just breathing. The real blow came when the records started arriving. Page after page of transfers to her personal accounts, checks written to cash, lavish credit card payments, even a family vacation she'd paid for with estate management funds. She'd been so sure I'd never look. I printed every page, laid them out on my floor. My small apartment was overtaken by the evidence of her theft. I used sticky notes to flag dates, highlighted patterns of withdrawals. It was like building a case file for an embezzler. Except it was my sister. I didn't cry anymore. There was no room left for sadness, only planning. We prepared the civil complaint. My lawyer drafted it carefully. Breach of fiduciary duty, fraud, conversion. We included a demand for punitive damages. He asked if I was sure. It will ruin her financially, he warned. I looked him in the eye and said, "Good." He nodded. We filed. I didn't tell her in advance. She found out when she was served. I'll never forget the day she showed up at my door, banging with her fist. I didn't answer. I watched her through the peephole. Her face was red, furious. She yelled my name, called me ungrateful, a bitch, a traitor. She threatened to make sure you regret this. I stood silently, hand on the lock, refusing to move. She didn't know I was smiling. Later that night, she sent me a single text. "I hope you're happy." I didn't reply. The discovery process got even uglier. Her lawyer tried to negotiate, offered a small settlement to make me go away. It was insulting, a fraction of what she'd stolen. I refused. I told my lawyer I'd rather pay more in legal fees than let her keep a cent. He didn't argue. We deposed her. I sat in the room across from her. She wouldn't look at me. Her lawyer objected constantly, but the questions kept coming. Where did the money go? Why no accounting? Why the transfers to your personal credit cards? Her voice shook. She lied, contradicted herself. The court reporter typed every word. I sat there, expressionless. Inside, I felt something close to satisfaction, not joy, just the certainty that the truth was bleeding out in front of witnesses. My lawyer told me later she'd done terribly. Judges don't like trustees who can't account for the money, he said. I nodded. I already knew. By the time the depositions ended, her defense was in tatters. She tried to paint me as ungrateful, greedy, but the numbers didn't lie. She'd spent tens of thousands that weren't hers. Vacations, home improvements, even paying off her personal debts. We finalized our trial strategy, subpoenaed her bank officers, got records from her credit card companies, box after box of paper, proof she'd gambled everything on me staying quiet. I slept better during those weeks. It wasn't over yet, but the direction was clear. She thought I wouldn't fight. She thought I was too polite to expose her. She'd forgotten the one thing I'd always understood better than her. Numbers don't lie. When the trial date finally arrived, I felt oddly calm. I'd spent months preparing for this moment, late nights with my lawyer, long weekends poring over bank records, reconstructing every dollar she had siphoned away. It was exhausting, but also clarifying. There was no more doubt about what she'd done. I didn't wear black to court that day. I wore a gray suit, hair pinned neatly back, makeup subtle but deliberate. I wanted to look controlled, professional. The opposite of the frantic thief I knew she'd become under pressure. She was already in the courtroom when I arrived. She avoided my eyes, fussing with papers, whispering angrily to her lawyer. I sat down at our table without acknowledging her. I wouldn't give her the satisfaction of knowing how much I wanted to scream at her. Instead, I focused on my lawyer's quiet rundown of the schedule, nodding when necessary. Outside, it was a beautiful day. Sunlight poured through the courthouse windows, casting everything in bright, clinical honesty. When the judge entered, we all rose. The clerk called our case. I kept my breathing slow. My sister's lawyer tried to delay, saying the matter could still be settled privately, but the judge had no patience for it. He wanted to see the accounting she'd failed to produce for over a year. They tried their excuses. The judge interrupted, voice clipped, asking her directly why she'd transferred tens of thousands from the estate to her personal account. She stammered something about expenses, but the judge pressed, "Show me the receipts." She didn't have them. My lawyer slid a binder onto the evidence table. It was thick with bank statements, credit card bills, checks written to cash. She went pale. She actually tried to argue the charges were for my benefit, like I'd somehow authorized her spa days and the family vacation in Spain. The judge wasn't impressed. He asked her twice if she understood her fiduciary duty as trustee. She said yes, voice shaking. He asked if she'd provided a full accounting. She went silent. My lawyer was surgical, calm questions that forced her to admit she'd refused to meet with me, ignored my written demands, failed to preserve records. Watching her squirm wasn't pleasant exactly, it was necessary. This wasn't about revenge in the petty sense. It was about exposing what she'd tried to hide under the cloak of family loyalty. When I took the stand, I didn't raise my voice. I told the court about my parents' wishes, our agreement to split everything equally. I described the initial trust, the promises she'd made to handle it fairly. I admitted I'd believed her. I didn't sugarcoat my own mistakes. I told the judge I'd been too trusting, too willing to assume my sister would honor our parents' memory. I made sure to look at her once, deliberately as I said it. She couldn't hold my gaze. By the end of the hearing, her lawyer was deflated. They offered another settlement, larger than before, but still insulting, an attempt to avoid a judgment. I shook my head. My lawyer spoke for me. "We want full restitution." The judge agreed. He ordered a complete, court-monitored accounting within 30 days. Any shortfall to be repaid in full, plus my legal fees. If she failed, the judge warned her, he'd consider criminal referral for fraud. When it was over, I gathered my papers quietly and stood. I felt her watching me as I walked past, but I didn't turn. Outside the courthouse, I let the spring air hit my face. My hands were shaking a little, but I felt lighter than I had in months. She tried to catch me before I reached the street, calling my name. I stopped but didn't turn around. She was sobbing now, voice cracking, begging me to talk about this, to fix it between us. I waited a moment before answering. My voice was level. "We did talk. In there. I'm done." Then I walked away without looking back. The court's final ruling came in writing a few weeks later. It was clinical, precise, and devastating for her. She was ordered to repay every stolen dollar with interest, plus my legal costs. The accounting showed just how far she'd gone. Luxury travel, shopping sprees, paying off her credit cards while I struggled to save for a home. She tried to delay payment, but the judge froze her accounts. She had to sell her car. Eventually, she even put her house on the market. I heard through family she blamed me for ruining her life. I didn't gloat. When the money hit my account, I sat quietly at my kitchen table, staring at the transfer confirmation. It didn't feel triumphant, just clean, honest, justice. I wasn't celebrating her downfall. I was reclaiming what was mine. I used the money exactly as I'd always planned. I made a down payment on a modest condo, signed the paperwork alone. I stood in the empty living room, light streaming through the windows, and felt the strangest combination of grief and relief. She was my sister. I would have shared anything with her freely if she'd just asked. But trust once broken like that can't be patched together. I didn't want revenge for revenge's sake. I wanted the truth acknowledged. I wanted the theft named. And I wanted her to know that the quiet one in the family would burn it all down before letting her get away with it. If you've made it this far, thank you for listening to my story. If you've ever faced betrayal, especially from someone you trusted most, I'd like to hear how you handled it. Leave a comment below and share your experience. And if you want to hear more stories about family, trust, and the price of betrayal, don't forget to subscribe.